The night falls heavy upon the medieval world, settling like a shroud over a land that knows no mercy. In the dim glow of a dying hearth fire, the harsh realities of daily life reveal themselves with brutal clarity. For most people, survival is measured not in years or months, but in days, sometimes hours. And you, transported into this unforgiving era, would find yourself thrust into a world where every breath is a battle. It begins at dawn, long before the sun breaches the horizon. The air is cold enough to bite through skin, and the stench of disease clings to every surface. You awaken on a straw-stuffed mattress that scratches your skin and crawls with lice. Already your first challenge is underway. In medieval life, there is no comfort, no privacy, no guarantee of safety. Every moment is a test. You step outside into a village still drowning in darkness. The mud beneath your feet is slick with filth, waste, animal manure, and the remnants of last night's rain. The alleys between wooden huts are narrow, their walls leaning inward as though conspiring to collapse. And the people, moving like shadows, bear the marks of constant struggle. Hollow cheeks, missing teeth, hands scarred by endless labor. Hunger gnaws at your stomach. Breakfast is not guaranteed. Food is earned, not given, and famine is always just one bad harvest away. Bread is coarse, dense, and scarce. Meat is a luxury most will never taste more than a few times a year. You watch as villagers rush toward the communal well, competing for access to water that is often contaminated, murky, and teeming with the invisible agents of disease. You begin to understand that survival here is not just difficult, it is nearly impossible. Soon the sun rises, revealing the true extent of the brutality around you. A man collapses in the street, weakened by fever. No one stops to help him. They can't. To touch illness is to risk death. Mothers clutch their children tightly, whispering prayers that won't reach far enough to save them. The plague lingers in every whisper of wind, and death moves through the village in silence. But the dangers are not limited to disease. The forests beyond the settlement conceal wolves, bandits, and worse, those desperate enough to kill for a loaf of bread. You catch sight of the local militia patrolling the outskirts, their rusted swords hanging loosely at their sides. They are not here to protect the villagers as much as to enforce the Lord's rule. And that Lord, who lives in a distant stone manor, owns everything, including you. Taxes are collected with ruthless efficiency. You witness a family begging for mercy as their last goat is seized for failing to meet their quota. Their pleas fall on deaf ears. In medieval society, mercy is rarer than gold. As the day wears on, you feel exhaustion settling into your bones. The labor is endless, the threats constant. You long for a moment of peace, but peace is a luxury of the future, not the past. Here, every moment of rest risks punishment, starvation, or worse. By nightfall, the village becomes a place of shadows and superstition. People bar their doors and shutter their windows, terrified of what lurks in the darkness. Supernatural fear governs their nights, demons, witches, and wandering spirits. Whether these threats are real or imagined makes little difference. Fear alone can kill. When the moon reaches its peak, you lie awake listening to the distant howls of animals and the closer cries of humans. You realize that, despite the horrors you face today, worse awaits you tomorrow. This is a world without safety, without comfort, without hope. And you have already survived longer than most outsiders ever would. The moment you emerge into the medieval morning, any illusion of safety dissolves. There is no gentle transition, no adjustment period, no time to get used to the past. The world strikes immediately, and it strikes hard. Your senses become weapons turned against you. The stench alone is overpowering. A dense cloud of human sweat, animal waste, stagnant water, and rot. You try to breathe through your mouth, but even eso tastes like smoke, acrid and constant, drifting from hearths that never truly extinguish. Your clothes are too clean, too soft, too strange. Eyes narrow, whispers form. In a universe onde tudo é suspeito, você já é culpado por existir. Hunger arrives early. You search for food and are met combos of boiled vegetation that have been simmering for days, absorbing every impurity that falls into the pot. A peasant offers you bread, if it can be called that. The crust is a stone, the interior dense and gritty. You bite and feel grains of actual rock grind against your teeth. A headache forms immediately, a dull throb signaling the first symptom of ergot fungus poisoning. Your hands start to tingle, your vision pulses, you think it's anxiety, it's not. Desperate for water, you seek a well, only to discover it is a repository of filth. Dead animals float just beneath the surface. Children casually walk by, unconcerned. They know better than to drink from it. They hand you a weak, watery beer instead. The taste is unpleasant, but it is safer than water. Soon you feel the mild alcohol fog your mind, mixing with hunger and dread. You want help. But help here is a superstition draped in confidence. A village healer examines you and declares your imbalance must be relieved. Before you can protest, he is already warming a blade over a flame. Bloodletting begins. He smiles, convinced he is saving you. By midday you are shaky, dizzy, and terrified. You walk into the village searching for calm, but the place is a maze of danger. Residents dump their chamber pots directly into the street. A warning shout echoes from above, but too late. Filth splashes across your legs. Your body tenses. You feel your throat gag. Locals hardly glance at you. You wander further and nearly slip into a trench-filled com-animal remains. Human waste and sludge. Rats scatter. The smell is indescribable. Then comes conflict. A merchant claims you looked at his daughter improperly. A guard insists your clothes mark you as a thief or spy. In seconds você é cercado. There is no presumption of innocence. There is no logic. Only fear, ego, and survival. They drag you to the square. A trial by ordeal awaits. A glowing iron rod lies on a table. The crowd leans forward. If you carry divine favor, your skin will not blister. You try to refuse, but refusal is guilt. The iron touches your palm. The burn is instant. The crowd inhales in disappointment. Night comes, but safety does not. In the darkness, criminals, deserters, and desperate men roam. They spot you immediately, a stranger, confused, unarmed. You sprint through muddy alleys, slipping, panting, heart racing. When you finally find refuge in a peasant's home, you collapse onto a shared straw mattress. The itching begins immediately. Fleas, lice, and mites swarm your skin. You listen to the heavy breathing of strangers beside you, praying none of them cough. A single illness shared here could finish you before dawn. And as you close your eyes, exhausted, filthy, frightened, you finally understand. The Middle Ages weren't deadly because of war or monsters. They were deadly because the world itself was your enemy. Every hour, every breath. You wouldn't need a week to die. 24 hours would already be asking too much. The third sunrise over the medieval horizon brought no relief, only a deepening harshness that pressed against the lungs of anyone forced to endure it. For the time-lost outsider now staggering through this world, the illusions of adapting had disappeared. Survival was no longer about discomfort, it was about calculating which threat would reach him first. He woke with his throat raw, not from illness, but from the smoke that permanently drifted through the settlement. Every home had a fire. Every fire exhaled its waste upward, and the wooden beams that supported entire villages kept the haze trapped low. The traveler blinked, eyes burning, vision blurred until he could barely see more than silhouettes moving in the dawn light. The day's work began before he had even stood upright. Medieval life understood only two states of being, labor or death. The lord who owned the land appeared rarely, yet his demands were felt everywhere, like a ghost with iron fists. His steward barked orders in clipped, sharp phrases that the traveler struggled to understand. It didn't matter. He was shoved toward the fields anyway. The soil was not soft farmland. It was a battlefield against nature itself. He hacked at weeds the size of saplings, uprooted stones embedded since ancient times, and dragged bundles of grain that cut his palms open in straight, burning lines. Blood mixed with dirt mixed with sweat, and there was no point trying to separate them. The others worked with grim efficiency, rarely speaking, never complaining. Their silence was more frightening than any shout. By midday his legs shook. He collapsed once, earning only a tired glance from an old farmer who had seen men fall and die 100 times before. The traveler was pulled back to his feet, not out of compassion, but because an extra pair of hands was worth more alive than resting. When food arrived, it came in wooden buckets carried by children. The same grey stew from the morning, only thinner now. The villagers ate quickly, as if swallowing disappointment before it could be tasted. The traveller forced it down, gagging once, and a woman nudged him with the back of her hand, a small warning that wasting food was an offence that could cost him far more than hunger. The afternoon brought a different trial. The Lord's men patrolling the countryside. They rode with confidence born from absolute power, their horses well fed, their armour gleaming compared to the rags of the peasants. They questioned every stranger, every man whose accent was off, every face they did not recognize. The traveller felt the weight of their suspicion instantly. Their questions came fast, in a dialect he only half understood. He answered poorly, fumbling, and that alone was enough to raise eyebrows. A soldier placed a hand on the hilt of his sword. Another circled behind him. In this world, being unable to name your birthplace could be interpreted as deception, or worse, espionage. Only the intervention of a local farmer, who lied smoothly about the traveller being a distant cousin from a far-off hamlet, saved him from being dragged away. But even then, the soldiers issued a warning. If he caused trouble, he would answer to them. The rescue was not free. That evening the farmer approached him with a quiet, firm demand. The traveller now owed him work, loyalty, and obedience. Debt was a chain, and he had just allowed it to be fastened around his neck. Nightfall was no sanctuary. The villages were dark, the moon weak behind clouds, and torches were expensive luxuries. People navigated by memory, by smell, by instinct. The traveller stumbled in the blackness, each step uncertain. Rats scurried across his feet. A dog growled from some unseen corner. Somewhere nearby a woman screamed, not for help, but from a beating, and no one intervened. Inside the longhouse where he was allowed to sleep, the air was thick with breath and damp wool. Bodies were packed together for warmth, and the traveller squeezed into a space barely wide enough for his ribs. Lice crawled across his scalp. Fleas bit at his ankles. Someone's elbow dug into his side. Someone else coughed relentlessly, a deep hacking sound that promised illness. When he finally drifted into a shallow sleep, it was not because he felt safe. It was because his body had nothing left to give. The medieval world was teaching him the same brutal lesson it had taught countless generations before him. Pain was ordinary, suffering was expected, and survival required surrendering every comfort he had ever known. And even so, there were 3 more horrors waiting for him before night became morning again. When the sun finally sinks behind the jagged silhouettes of the kingdom's crooked rooftops, the traveller believes the worst of the day is over. He is wrong. In the harsh world of medieval Europe, the night is the true predator, and he has just stepped into its hunting ground. Inside the cramped hut where he has been offered shelter, the air thickens into something almost tangible. Smoke from the hearth coils along the ceiling, never escaping, trapped like every soul inside. The fire crackles, but it does not warm the room. It merely illuminates the crawling silhouettes across the straw mattress. It is then that the traveller notices movement. Small, synchronized, hungry. Lice, fleas, bedbugs, an entire civilization of parasites thriving in the very place meant for rest. They invade his scalp, his clothes, the seams of his blanket. Some bite, some burrow. Others simply wait for him to close his eyes. Sleep becomes a negotiation with pain. But even if he could ignore the crawling under his skin, the noise outside would prevent rest. The medieval night is not silent. It is alive. Restless, unpredictable. Dogs bark in frantic bursts, signaling threats both real and imagined. Hooves clatter as mounted patrols pass, praying they won't be ambushed. Wind moans through the wooden beams like a warning. Every sound carries a message. You are not safe. The traveller attempts to breathe deeply, but the smoke-laden air is suffocating. The family he shares the room with sleeps soundly. They are used to it. Their lungs, hardened by years of inhaling fire and filth, endure what his cannot. His chest tightens, his eyes sting, his throat burns. He coughs, and instantly whispers rise. They glance at him with suspicion. Illness spreads like wildfire here. Sickness is not misfortune, it is accusation. Outside, the dangers multiply as the darkness deepens. Crime thrives in the absence of witnesses. Highwaymen linger near village perimeters. Deserters from nearby armies roam freely, armed, starved, and desperate. Wolves skirt the edges of cultivated land, waiting for livestock or humans who wander too far. Even the authorities bring no comfort. A patrol might mistake the traveler's strange clothing or unfamiliar accent as signs of sorcery, espionage, or banditry. In this world, suspicion is enough to justify violence. The night stretches on, long and merciless. The cold intensifies, the fire fades. He curls beneath a coarse wool blanket, feeling the straw crackle beneath him. A rat scurries across the floorboards, bold and accustomed to human presence. For the medieval villager, this is normal, a rhythm of endurance learned since childhood. But for the outsider, the hours become unbearable. Each minute is another reminder that this world was never designed for softness, comfort, or survival by modern standards. By the time the first grey light pierces the shutters, the traveller's body trembles from cold, exhaustion, and fear. He has not slept, he has barely breathed. He has endured pests, smoke, noise, and the constant awareness that danger lurks inches beyond the thin wooden wall. And still, somehow, this was considered a peaceful night in medieval times. Tomorrow will be worse. The final days of Sir Aldrich's journey unfolded beneath an ominous sky, the kind that seemed to press down on the earth with ancient judgment. Rumours of the demon's awakening had spread far beyond the shattered villages of the frontier. Travellers fleeing westward carried tales of burning fields, of monstrous silhouettes in the night, of shadows that moved with intent and hunger. Every step Aldrich took into the blighted valley felt like a descent into the marrow of something cursed. The valley itself had changed. Once a cradle of fertile soil and peaceful hamlets, it now pulsed with a quiet, unnatural tremor. The ground was veined with blackened cracks, and the air thrummed with the low hum of an unseen force. Even the wind seemed to hesitate before entering. Aldrich's armor felt heavier in this place, as if the land itself were warning him away. Leora walked at his side, her staff glowing faintly, resisting the oppression that coiled around them. Elendor, though weakened from the ritual at the ruins, moved with grim determination. Together they made their silent approach toward the cavern, the one whispered in prophecy, the one marked on the ancient scrolls with a single word: origin. Inside, the cavern's walls glistened like obsidian, absorbing their torchlight rather than reflecting it. A vast chamber opened before them. At its center, a stone dais carved with symbols older than any kingdom. Above it hovered a sphere of living shadow, churning, writhing, held by invisible chains of light that flickered, as though on the verge of failing. The demon was nearly free. Aldrich stepped forward, feeling the weight of every life depending on what happened next. His sword, reforged with ancient silver and blessed in Leora's blood-binding ritual, pulsed with a pale white flame. Her weapon meant not merely to wound the demon's vessel, but to sever the tether between mortal flesh and the corrupted spirit within. The vessel lumbered into view from the darkness, a towering form, once human, now twisted beyond recognition. Horns jutted from its skull, and its eyes burned like coals in a dying fire. Its voice rumbled like an avalanche. "Aldrich of Harrendale, you arrive at last." The knight did not falter. "I will end this, not for destiny, for the people you've tormented." The ensuing battle shook the cavern. Blades of darkness slashed through the air, shattering stone. Leora's chants echoed as she summoned barriers of shimmering light. Elendor's arrows struck true, each one embedding into the vessel's corrupted flesh with a burst of purifying force. Aldrich danced between death and resolve, his sword singing as it met the demon's blows. For a moment it seemed impossible. The demon's strength was overwhelming, its presence suffocating. Aldrich's arms trembled, his breath ragged. The vessel's clawed hand slammed him against the dais, cracking the stone beneath him. Shadows wrapped around his throat, lifting him from the ground. "Your world will fall," the demon hissed. "Your light is a dying ember." Aldrich's grip tightened around his sword's hilt. Through the haze of pain, he saw Leora's eyes, pleading, trusting, unwavering, and Elendor's silent nod. With the last of his strength, Aldrich thrust the blade upward. Light erupted from its edge like a sunrise breaking through storm clouds. The shadows recoiled, shrieking. The cavern trembled as the sword pierced the vessel's chest, severing the last binding thread. The sphere above the dais shattered into 1,000 sparks, each one dissolving into harmless motes of light. The vessel collapsed. The demon's scream, raw, ancient, defeated, echoed deep into the earth before fading into nothing. Silence followed, heavy, absolute. Aldrich fell to his knees. Leora caught him, her hands trembling. "You did it," she whispered. Elendor approached, placing a steadying hand on Aldrich's shoulder. "The corruption is gone. The valley will heal." When they emerged from the cavern, dawn awaited them. Warm light spilled across the scarred land, revealing the first signs of life, green shoots pushing through the ashen soil, birds cautiously returning to the sky. Word of Aldrich's victory spread quickly, carried by survivors and travelers to every corner of the realm. Songs were written, though Aldrich claimed no glory. He knew too well the cost etched into the land and into his own heart. But hope had returned, and in time the valley's name, once synonymous with despair, became a symbol of resilience, a testament to the courage of those who stood against the darkness when all seemed lost. For generations, storytellers would recount the tale of Sir Aldrich the Unyielding, the knight who faced the demon's shadow and restored the light to a forgotten land.